Hey guys, welcome to the Refined Savage. On this week's show, we have Matt Wenning, former world record holder in the powerlifts and outstanding strength coach, and one of his clients, Brooke Sousa, who is one of the strongest women on the planet. She's a longtime contributor to the show and a Refined Savage sponsored athlete. So this was a great conversation. We went down to Ludus Magnus. Spent about an hour or so chatting, and there was a lot of great information, a lot of great stories, and I think you're really going to enjoy this one. So please like, share, subscribe, get the word out about the Refined Savage. The more people we have listening, the cooler the podcast will get. Thanks. Matt Wenning and Brooke Sousa. We're back in Columbus, Ohio. How's it going, guys?
Fantastic.
Good.
So we're getting ready for the Arnold. And Brooke, what is the name of the competition you're doing? What is this? Is it the
Arnold Pro Strongwoman.
Is it like Strongman Core? Is that?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So let's talk about a little bit about what you guys have been doing leading up to this with her.
Okay.
To start. I mean, well, you just said you were sick for 5 weeks or something.
Yeah, that's been fun.
She pulled all the bullshit cards out for the whole process. This one.
How rude.
I'm sick, my back, my foot.
Thankfully, I have plenty of doctors, notes to back all that up.
I don't feel good.
But still kept on with training.
Yeah.
So we played around with some stuff this cycle. We had been playing around with the last few years of doing stuff very generalized, prepared. So Brooke came to me 2 years ago wanting to do strongman, but had a lot of weaknesses, like muscular individual weaknesses that we knew we could see plain as day.
Right.
Point being is, you can do all the specific work you want, but without the tools, right? It's like you want to drive a car, but you got no fucking steering wheel and gas pedal. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So we gave her the steering wheel and the gas pedal the last few years. So what we experimented with this cycle was taking her and having her do more specific work. We, everything that was pressing was overhead. Everything that was deadlifting was very similar to the events. And what we started to find was 3/4 through the cycle, she was fucking beat up and hurt, just like every other strongman. And so what we found this time is that we're still going to play with specific things in the future. But what we're going to, and I'm not saying hurt as in she's not going to do well at the competition. I'm saying is we started seeing these nagging injuries like everybody else complains about.
So this was kind of your, it was a trial and error trying to figure out what works best.
My thought pattern was, and she lasted longer than, not that I thought, but she went through the cycle better than I thought because I wanted to give her specificity to where she felt comfortable with every event.
Right.
The good thing is that this Arnold, all the events play to her strengths. But what we found, hindsight now, is that everything was too specific.
Right.
Started to create a lot of the nagging issues and all these other particular things that we just didn't have the last 2 years, which made her very successful. So we had to, almost in the middle of the cycle, go back to what we knew and still play around with what we wanted to do specifically.
Right.
And we finally had it mastered, I'd say, the last 3 or 4 weeks. With other than getting sick and, I mean, the weather's just been fucked here in Ohio.
Yeah, it's brutal.
It's been 60 one day and then down to 20 the next, and the sinus shit that's going around and bronchitis is just nasty.
You going out of the house with a t-shirt on.
And then we put a Caribbean vacation in the middle of the swing of things.
Yeah,
and
you always do that in a stupid time of year.
Deload.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you're right before the competition. You always go on this Caribbean vacation.
It's the one time I actually get to go on vacation.
Yeah.
And that's when everyone goes the last 12 years. And
yeah, you
you just gotta
huge group that goes with you down there.
Yep.
I think the big thing with it is that what people underestimate the power of to getting ready for this type of shit is being, and even if it's in the middle of a training cycle, is the mental freshness.
Yeah.
Like when you come back, you might feel like asshole for like 2 to 3 training cycles, but then the next 2 weeks you're going to have another super compensation phase. So I don't really, and it's one of the things I don't really still understand to this day, even though I've played around with almost everything, is I've done it multiple ways and always got great results from putting deloading, vacations, and things in spots you would think would not be the optimal, But I think it becomes back down to mental freshness, down to that day. And if Brooke trains hard all the time, she doesn't have an off. If you know anything about strongman, they don't have a fucking off season. That's the problem with strongman. You're always having to constantly requalify. So it doesn't really matter where Brooke puts her vacations because there's no fucking off season.
Yeah, and if it was like the guys where there was a lot of money on the line too, you can't say no. You're going to do the Arnold in Australia, you're going to do the Arnold here in Europe. And,
but now, this is the 5th competition in 9 months. I'm like, I haven't had any social life or time away for the last 11 months.
You're young, you have a social life
So
later.
She's starting to realize now what it really takes to be the best.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been one of those things that I think what's going to be the big advantage for her at this cycle was she finally realized how to relax. That is what Brooke did not have when I hear, because, when people are interested in strongman or pro level powerlifting, they don't understand what you have to do the other 23 hours a day, which is fucking relax, turn everything off, and learn how to kind of recover. Right. And Brooke's finally learned how to recover this last 6 or 8 months, I'd say. That's going to be the big advantage to her going into this comp.
Yeah. So what's been the difference? How did you get that in your head?
Well, I had to be yelled at, clearly.
I love how you get treated in here, too, because as soon as I walk in the door, everybody's giving you shit.
Absolutely. And, I mean, obviously that just makes me a better person, but you got to learn how to take it, too. And,
mental thing. You're never going to have as much shit given you in a competition as you do in your own gym.
Oh, yeah, that's what makes it so much easier competing.
Athletes,
the big thing that Brooke is like, she comes into the gym now, and the big thing is that she... We still try to treat her like it's her first couple of weeks to keep her kind of, I'm not going to say humble, but she realizes that there's amount of work. And it was almost like how I was treated with Louie. No matter how good you did, it didn't matter. It was always about the next goal. Right. It was always about the next thing. You never had time to sit back and to be, comfortable with what you accomplished. It's always you're proving something else all the time. And the thing of it is that Brooke came into the game late. She's 35 already. So we don't have another 10 years to get her better. Yeah. We got this short amount of time,
Yeah, that's interesting. I just read a thing with Nick Saban talking about that. When they won a national championship in Alabama, and they celebrated for a week, and then you're right back to work. That's it. You get a week to relax and say, oh, this has been great, right back to work. And I'm betting he doesn't take that long. That's his staff.
Right.
No, I think what you have to do is you have to be willing to take that time to bask in your accomplishments once you've decided to start taking it down. Once you've decided to start I'm very comfortable with all the numbers I hit over the years. I think I'm really proud of the things that I did, but I didn't look at it that way when I was doing it. I just looked at it as here's the next step, here's the next goal, and I got to keep Brooke that way. And that's been one of the hardest things I think at the gym is that I'm comfortable with what I did phase, and now I just want to diet down and look good, right? Right. I just want to be a pussy magnet. And now Brooke is like, I still have to keep Brooke in that particular zone where she is still driving to the moon. Yeah. So that's not been the friction. But it's been hard for me as a coach because I'm kind of on the way down. I'm still training like a fucking crazy man. Right. But if I was still trying to push, say, Thor or Shaw right now, it'd be really hard for me. Right. But, if I back down, no matter how lean I get, Brooke still has to work hard to keep up with me. Because I'm just a guy that was world-class strong. Yeah. So, and for, it's like pro strongman woman, pro strongman man. Those are two different classes. And I think that strength level has always been able to help Brooke because if Brooke has to come in and squat with me, she's still the low man on the totem pole, which makes her work hard.
Well, that's got to be
But if she were to go work out with all of the people that want to be strong women that she trains, she would have a hard time getting strong because she's going to kick their ass every.
And you spend all that time coaching them too.
Right. Yep. So it's always good to be around like the heavier weights, and when you see 8 plates loaded on a deadlift, you're like into my 5, that's nothing, and so you also just feel like, okay, well, someone here is stronger, and if they're not getting hurt, I'm not going to get hurt either.
Leading into that, the other big advantage of this year is we're not fixing old technical problems this year. So she went up to her last heavy squat last week, right? And I look over and go, is that Brooke squatting? Because her knees aren't bucking in and she's not rounding over. She's not doing it like a strongman. She's starting to do it like a powerlifter. And what's funny to me is that a lot of strongman can't look and go how good Half Thor's technique looks on powerlifting events. Like, he looks really good squatting and really good deadlifting.
But again, he didn't always.
No.
The last few years,
he's gotten better.
Dialed that shit in.
So I guess the big advantage now is with Brooke is that I don't have to keep my eye on her to know she's doing something more perfect now. Yeah. Now it's all about pushing the intensity. Whereas the first 2 years, we had to get everything fixed that she was doing wrong.
Well, did you say your big thing was you never squatted before you came in here?
Right.
Which is insane.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but That's what you deal with in a sport that, attracts. I mean, there's just not a lot of money, even in strongman around. So the thing of it is, you have a lot of these, what I would consider fucking poser coaches that people just go, well, this guy coaches, he must know what he's talking about. Well, to be honest with you, and I'm not like trying to toot my own horn, but if you want the level of coaching that I can provide, there's 10 guys in the country that probably know what I know, and that's given a lot.
And that goes for, I look at these CrossFit athletes, and if I get a CrossFit athlete in who's a high-level CrossFit athlete, I'll get them to regionals. There's no doubt about it, because I've got the knowledge base to do it. If you are a CrossFit athlete, you go to or you go to a Joe Ken type or a Buddy Morris type, because they've got the knowledge base. You don't go to another CrossFit coach who's got his level 2 CrossFit cert and he's been in the sport for 6 years. They know about running a good CrossFit
basic
gym.
Training will get you basic results.
Absolutely.
And if you want insane results, you got to go to people that have knowledge that's just not in the normal. And that's not easy to find, because I don't think you can find that type of knowledge in books. Now, everything that I do, you could find in Zatsiorsky's book, you can find in Medvedev's book, you can find in all these Soviet training books, Kramer's old books. But the thing of it is application at that time is completely different. That's where the art comes. And you can have all the reading you want. That's why sometimes it's almost bad to read these books before you actually apply, because some of this knowledge has to be earned by sweating under the bar.
Right.
There's no way to know. Like when I watch Brooke come in and squat, I can tell you the first 3 sets of what kind of day she's going to have and how to adjust it. That's not in a fucking book.
Right.
And that's where the magic is to making somebody better, is you're applying what is available that day, not in the whole cycle. So everything changes for Brooke based on what we feel and what she sees and what I see that day. And now the skeleton of the workout stays the same.
Right.
But what is adjusted is all based on daily energy level, daily recovery level, daily stress level.
And your own personal art that you bring to the programming.
Yeah.
We were at that, I won't say where because I don't want to get the guy in trouble, but we were both at a seminar a couple months ago where a guy was talking about having trained with the Russians and gone over the Chinese.
Oh, yes.
And someone asked him, is Louis' system the Russian system? And he said, there is no Russian system. They have these principles that they all follow, but they all have their different art that they bring to this system. So when you talk about that, about reading all those books, it isn't as useful as if you've been under that bar and you've worked with athletes and know what to look for when they come in. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of knowledge.
No amount of education beats smart application.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is I think you got somebody that goes and watches other people do crazy shit, and then you actually have to apply that for 15 years and learn how it actually works. Those are completely different. And what you got to remember with the Soviet system and the Chinese system and the Bulgarian system, it was a fucking sausage grinder.
Yeah.
They didn't have a system. What they had was insanity, and they applied it to 2,000 people, and the 5 that can handle it are the ones that you saw.
Yeah.
They found the Klokoffs out of the whole population. They found the Bo Jackson.
Yeah.
That's what the system was designed to do. It wasn't a magical. People like, oh, I can't believe how smart the Bulgarians and the Russians and the Chinese train. Motherfucker, they went out to 500 million people and they found 3 Bo Jacksons.
Yeah.
Now,
absolutely.
what if somebody would have found Bo Jackson at 10 years old and taught him Olympic lifting? What the fuck would have happened?
Rolled him a heavy stone, and he could have lifted it and been strong enough to do Olympic weightlifting.
And I'm not taking away from the fact that all of the studies and research and applications, but I think people tend to neglect the fact that that system was designed, especially the Bulgarian and the Chinese system, is not designed on smarts. It's designed on finding the freak.
Yeah.
And that's where you have to take those books and go, wow, this is really cool application of knowledge. But what you don't understand is that what I've taught Brooke is that I've gotten Brooke as close to a communist system as I possibly can. She's going to train, and then she's going to fucking rest, and then she's going to eat exactly what I tell her to eat. And there's no external stressor.
Right.
I mean, her children get her food ready for her, not the other way around. Now, who has that system?
Right. Yeah.
Right? And thank God the kids are the most amazing girls I've ever seen. But the point of it is that she doesn't have any external stressors outside other than training, and that's why she does well.
Yeah.
And if you can't make that your life, then you're probably not going to be pro.
You need to make that your life and be a phenomenal athlete.
Yeah, what does Thor do besides go and shoot stuff for Game of Thrones? He
Right.
fucking trains and sleeps and eats.
Yep.
So if you want to be that badass, it's different. I think it's different when people don't realize how secluded you have to be great.
Well, look at Brian Shaw. So Brian Shaw was on top of the world, and I saw this coming because I've been there, and you've been there. You have a kid, your whole life changes.
Uh-huh.
So if you want to get up and tend to that child at 2 a.m. when he cries, and not just make your
Training just dropped 10% the next day.
It happens
Now that
when I was
10% over a month is a lot of volume and a lot of intensity that the body just doesn't recover or doesn't do from, and your recovery turns into shit.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's a choice that everybody has to make at certain ages and times, and maybe never. But the point is that if you want to be the best you can be, all those things are neglected. That's why O'Hearn hasn't had a kid since he's 50.
Yeah.
He's having his first kid at 50 years old.
Right.
He would have never been on the cover of 250 magazines and been probably one of the best built men to ever live if he wouldn't have been selfish that way.
Yeah.
And his girlfriend completely understands that. Like when I go eat with him, it's all based around what time Mike O'Hearn has to eat, what time Mike O'Hearn has to train. He knows that is going to change a little bit. Yeah. But he has the structure at home. Mona has the structure to tell him, hey, look, I'll take care of the kid. You go do what you need to do.
Go do your job.
And that's what it is, and that's what it is with her now. And I think that it was the biggest transition, regardless of whether I think we went too specific with some of the training this cycle. Her recovery is a billion times better, which is going to make the training cycle shine like, spots and mirrors. But we both realized that training specific is not the way to go anymore.
Right.
Ever.
Well, and you've turned that dial now, so next time we don't go that far. There's certain people who did that way. Yokohara, that's all he trained. He just trained the events, and he deadlifted and squatted.
And he was good for 2 years.
He was good for 2 years, but he was also a freak. He had arms that went down past his knees, and he was just built to do that shit.
I think as far as strongman goes, you can't ever neglect the smarts of training and the ability to diversify and the ability to not train too specific to Magnus for Magnuson. He was not the biggest or the strongest. He was the smartest, and that's why he lasted as long as he did and was as dominant as he was for as long as he was.
He said that. I did a podcast with him about this time last year, and he said that. He said he thought about it way more than everybody else, and he was able. They didn't have event stuff, They didn't have They didn't have gyms with logs in it. Or
he was a tactician,
and he figured out how to outsmart people, and then he just outworked them too. So.
Yep. So that's the big thing that I think's changed Brooke this last year to two is not necessarily the cool shit we do in the gym, which is awesome. That's a portion of it. But I would say in percentages, the largest percentage is now we've taught her how to turn everything off and be lazy and recover when you're not training. Whereas you were always worried about wanting to be doing something all the time. She had this, I want to go do this. I want to go do that. I want to go travel and watch this strongman event. I want to go to West Virginia and watch these other people compete. I'm like, you don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Now you are you. You worry about what you need to do because if it fucks up your next training cycle, you're the one that's going to pay for it.
Right.
When I was throwing, I didn't do anything. Like people would want to, hey, we're going to go play pickup basketball. Fuck that.
Yeah.
What if I roll an ankle?
Right.
What
Yeah.
if my training sucks the next day? I'm not doing that.
Yeah, they don't
Sit
have
in
the
front of
same.
television.
They
That's
don't
all you
have the
did.
same buy-in. They don't have the same. Most people are not going to have the same responsibility and the same things they're going to have to give up the next day if that happens. And that's why the normal people will never understand how to get really good because it's not about the training; it's about the sacrifice of around the training.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, because that's your life. That's the life stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You said that small window.
Yep.
And the other big thing is now we've made Brooke so much more harder because of her diet. Now we flipped everything over to kind of how Shaw and Thor eats, which I've already been doing for quite a while. That's why I'm so much harder than I am now. But we're transitioning her from being big and strong to fucking lean at 280 body weight strong.
So we talked about that. We were just talking about that before the podcast started, about how much your body has changed since the first time I came down here to talk to you.
Yeah.
I mean, the second time we did the podcast, you came up there, and all of a sudden you got a V taper, and I'm like, where the fuck did this come from? And I mean, how is the diet going with you?
Well, what is this? 14 months in?
Yeah, she's been dieting about the same time I have.
I mean, still, you just crave beef and rice. I mean, your body just wants it all the time.
It wants highly absorbable foods with quality proteins and carbs, and what you find is that mean, it's pretty easy for us to regiment because we pretty much go eat every time together.
Yeah.
But what you find is that when we go decide, fuck it, we want a cheat meal, we go to eat a cheat meal, we can't finish it.
Yeah.
Because the stomach is not used to that type of food, so the
Right.
bloating goes crazy.
Yeah.
But now that's the big thing you start realizing is that your absorbability with quality foods goes so high that your portion size becomes more controlled because you're eating 5 times a day instead of maybe 3 big meals.
Mm-hmm.
You're eating 5 small. I don't think that there is, we've got Corey Gregory that we just got done talking to. He has a completely different mindset. But what you start finding is that I think still that the 5 meal a day thing works because it starts to limit your portion size.
Mm-hmm.
Then your efficiency of what you eat and how you absorb is much higher. Then when you actually do eat a shitty meal, there's no way you can eat nearly as much as you used to. So we went and got pizza at what was the place called? Giordano's,
Yeah.
which is like the super thick Chicago.
Right.
And we used to order a large with breadsticks and fucking smoke that thing.
Yeah.
Like, no big deal. I mean, you're talking a 4-inch thick
Right.
pizza. We ordered a medium, and we have 4 slices left.
Yeah, we couldn't
And
even
we were
finish half of it.
starving.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, oh, this sounds so good. We start eating, and we're like, fuck, my stomach.
I heard you talking to him before, and I kind of want your theory on this because I felt the same way. So I've been some form of ketogenic diet since 2012, but that was mainly for health problems.
Yep.
But every once in a while, I'll go out and do sushi with the wife.
Yep.
And I'm talking maybe once every few months.
Yep.
The next morning, I look so much harder after I've ingested all this rice that my body. What's your theory on it? Because I heard you talking to him about that.
My
After your
theory
cheat
is
meal.
that you eat so clean that the body starts to almost create a resistive hormone to putting on anabolic tissue, okay, which is needed. And then when you push in that extra calorie or a different type of food source, the body actually reignites the hormonal furnace. And maybe, like I said, that's not my background. I'm not an endocrinologist. But let me tell you how it feels. I go eat a fucking cheat meal, and the next morning, I'm harder.
Yes.
And the
that's what
reason is
that's
because
what
my
I feel.
metabolism goes higher. But you have to eat clean enough, long enough that it actually works that way. And I think that has to do with your body's ability to be resistant or sensitive to the insulin response.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're always using insulin all the time at a high level with poor food selection, you're never going to get that type of anabolic spike from a cheat meal.
Right.
But if your insulin is staying real steady key, and then you pop in some extra calories, I'm not saying shit calories,
Yeah.
but you pop in some
White
extra
rice
calories,
and sushi
white
or
rice, sushi, pineapple, right, sushi. I mean, even occasionally pizza and things like that. You pop that in, the body is going to flip the hormones into more anabolic for maybe 12 to 14 hours, and it's actually going to reignite the furnace. There's been times that I've eaten till I've damn near been sick in the face on a cheat meal, and the next morning I get up and I've lost a pound.
Yeah.
How did that work?
Yeah.
Well, something had to boost the metabolism. So I do think there are cheat meals needed for metabolism boosting, and it also is very dependent on how much muscle tissue you want to retain. So right now we got Brooke on a cheat meal every 4 to 5 days. She has to maintain around 290 to be as strong as she wants to be. It's impossible to do that on clean food all the time.
Right.
But if she doesn't eat clean most of the time, when we pop in that cheat meal, what's going to happen is she's not going to get the response she wants. It's just going to put on body fat. So there has to be a delicate balance between completely strict and then throwing in cheating to increase anabolic efficiency, or however you want to call it.
Right.
And I'm still I consider myself the infancy stages of understanding where I started dieting 14 months ago.
Well, and we talked about that the last podcast. Is that when I remember seeing you years ago at like
310.
I think the first time I met you was at West Side, and then I saw you at the Throws Coaches Convention once. You were so much more swelled up from all the inflammation.
Yep.
Because your diet was shit.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, when you peeled that back and really started to look into it, your body changed real quick. And that's the same thing I've noticed with you in the last year is how much your body's changed. Do you feel, what does it feel like? I mean, most people will in Strongman, which drives me fucking nuts, is, oh, I'm Strongman, I get to eat whatever the fuck I want, be as fat as I want.
There's a lot of that. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, come on, just eat this. And it's like, you realize your body doesn't want that. And you just feel, run down, and the inflammation alone just wears you down.
Yeah.
And the thing of it is eventually, maybe not initially, but eventually, you're only going to be as strong as healthy you are.
Yeah.
And I realized that the last 3-4 years is completely training raw. I think what really transitioned me personally was that inflammation and holding that extra bad weight was amazing for gear lifting.
You're eating into it.
Because you're pushing into that gear, you're making it tighter. You're swelling up inside that gear, and if you're more spongy, you're more springy.
Yeah.
Versus when you're dry, you don't have that water weight and you don't have that compression factor. So in gear lifting, especially in our heyday, you were better off being more bloated in the gear. That's why you see, other than Ryan Kennelly and maybe a few others, the guys that are the best shirt benchers look like professional hot dog eaters. They don't they don't look like they could bench 600 pounds raw.
Well, that's why I was never attracted to geared lifting, because I had met a couple of those guys who were 1,000-pound squatters, and I thought, I don't want to look like this guy. You know, I want to look like Doug Furness.
Yeah, I was one of the few guys that were over 300 that when I was squatting in full gear, I still had veins on my legs.
Yeah. You and Chuck both looked good.
But you know, Chuck, the problem, like our workouts would take a normal man and just fucking eat them alive. We had guys that were coming in that could squat, maybe not exactly what we could squat. You know, when we were over at Louis' joint, they couldn't hang with our warm-ups, then our big lifts, and then our accessories. I mean, it was just unbelievable. We trained like, I mean, back then, like before anybody knew CrossFit, we trained like powerlifting CrossFit style. I mean, really, it was so fast, so short rest periods, so intense, so high heart rate. And Chuck did that to break people. He didn't do that to make you better. He did that to see if you could hang. And then once you earned his respect, he'd let you kind of do what you wanted to do. But then you already had the work ethic to train that hard. So that was a big ball breaker for me as I came over, and I was a 500-pound bencher as a teenager, and I'm working out with a guy that, okay, you know, the warm-up and then the big lift's done, I'm smoked, and these motherfuckers are still working out for another 45 minutes, and I'm not talking sitting around talking, like bleeding. Like I remember the first time I went over, they were doing this tricep extension off the floor where you take the dumbbell and you roll it back until the end of the dumbbell touches the floor and straightening it. We did 70-pound dumbbells for that. Now, keep in mind, I'm like right around 20. We're doing 70-pound dumbbells with that, and we did it, after it was all said and done, we did the same exercise for 16 minutes. Not straight. We were taking breaks and doing sets. But they were just boom, 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 rest, boom, boom, boom. And I just remember, holy fuck, when are we done with this? And then I started to realize that these dudes' arms were so strong that it didn't matter how fatigued they were after a heavy squat. The bench was always still there because they trained it in such a deficit that it was just all the muscle was there. So I've applied that with Brooke, you know, and all these other people.
Well, the one quote you heard, I think it was on Zach Evanesh's podcast, that I actually wrote on the wall of our gym, that, you know, as an athlete, you need to learn how to train with a fucked up heart rate. And that's kind of my whole philosophy.
Because most of that, it's not heart rate. It's basically you're uncomfortable. When you're uncomfortable and your body starts to resist what you want to do, that's when you're going to make gains, but there's a magic spot. There's that gray area where it's too much. So if you look at most CrossFit type workouts and things like that, it's too much. They're not even getting any result from it. And then there's too little where the body really doesn't have enough stimulus that gets better. And what you find is that when you're weak, that gray area is massive. You know, you can train a little too hard or a little too less, you're always going to get better. But then as your genetic potential rises, that gray area becomes smaller and smaller. What is optimal? Optimal when you bench 600 is a half a millimeter gray and a ton of not too much and a ton of way too much, right? But when you bench 200, the gray area is massive. And that's where it gets fucked up, because the stronger you get, the smarter you have to be. And everybody thinks that they can use the same cycle and training methodology that they used to go from, say, top 10 in the world in Strongman to top 1. That doesn't work anymore, because you're already at your ceiling limit, and now 2% work is taking what 20% better got you last time. Does that make sense?
It's always a different, the stronger you get, the stronger you get, the smarter you're going to have to get in order to push that little bit more.
And if you got stronger, right, that means it took time, which means you're older. Which means then again, you got to train smarter as you get older. So I would say now 30-40% of Brooke's heavy leg workouts, especially in the off season, are all traction based. So we're throwing in the belt squat at least once a month to every 3 weeks, because I know that those muscles need to get stronger, but we can't use compressive forces in order to do it, or she's going to have a shortened career.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, we're again going back to Strongman. You're training the legs, which you're not going to, very rarely you're going to see a squat in a Strongman competition. But we still need that power for everything else. So
having a huge squat is great, but the goal is to have strong legs, not a big squat.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the hard part is that you really, if you look at the top level, let's just say powerlifters, you don't see guys that have these insane squats that don't have insane deadlifts. Like they're all, and I'm not saying they're equal, but they have some symmetry to them.
Now that they're raw, for sure.
And now that they're raw, for sure. So the point is like, I trained her squat because I knew that she hasn't done it, and I knew it was a new avenue to create new strength. She already had a decent deadlift. So this is where everybody gets screwed up, is that when you look at your training cycle, what you need out of that cycle to progress and everything, the fastest way to get better is to find what you haven't done and what you suck at the most. Mm-hmm. Those two things are going to be the magic to making the new progress, because those two things your body is unfamiliar with, and unfamiliarity creates the best strength gain. You want an exercise that's going to give you the biggest bang for your buck today? Let's go out in the gym and find something you've never done before.
Right. And
that's going to make you the strongest and the most sore that you've ever been because of unfamiliarity. So when I came into her, I knew she could deadlift, but she couldn't squat. Mm-hmm. And the squat she didn't look like a squat. It looked like a good half-assed good morning. Right. So once it started to look like a squat, guess what happened? Her deadlift went up. Mm-hmm. What she used to pull for max, you pulled 500 for speed.
Right.
And it was like, okay, so it just kept proving my point is it's not about strongman, it's not about powerlifting, it's about strength deficit. It's about finding the area that you don't have, making it better, and watch everything else blossom.
Which goes back to what we just talked about as far as finding strength coaches with knowledge bases. It's not about getting her a bigger squat. It's about finding what she sucks at, getting her better. And that goes for if you're a football player coming in here, or a CrossFitter coming in here, or anything else.
Well, you know what's funny is you probably got it all the time too with throwing, and with other sports, and people asking you questions. And I know Brooke gets it all the time on email. I get it constantly. And what you find is that everybody first starts their first part of their email, or their first part of their conversation is, "I'm a football player. I'm a thrower. I'm a strongman.
Yeah.
I do fucking soccer. I don't give a fuck what sport you do. What do you suck at? And are you strong? Are you fast? Are you weak? Do you have no GPP?" Those are the things that I'm looking for. I'm looking for the big gap, the big hole.
Right.
And then the next thing, that's the training circle. Now you got this other circle of, well, what's your fucking nutrition? What is your sleep? Yeah. What is this? What is that? Because those things are massive.
Well, and the other thing is they'll tell you that, but then they don't want to address it either.
Right.
Well, your GBP sucks. Well, I do this. I don't really need that, or this hurts, and it's just like, then go email somebody else.
I know. So the big thing is that you have to look for what's the big gap that you have. If you're really quick and you're not strong, get stronger and watch your quickness rise. If you're strong but you're not quick and your quickness goes up, watch how much stronger you get. If you're out of shape, when you get in shape, watch how much easier you can recover from your heavy workouts.
Yeah.
That's one of the big ones you find is guys that want to get super strong, they trade strength for fitness, and then they find out why their strength doesn't go anywhere is because they forgot fitness back 5 years ago, and now they're just fat pieces of shit, and they can't recover from anything.
Well, we've seen it. I mean, you and I have seen it in plenty. And these guys, I have conversations with guys who have purple ankles, and I'm just like, you're
and they want to talk to you about squat volume.
Right.
They don't want to talk to you about diabetes.
Right.
The beatus.
I mean,
you have to beat us.
I came out of a sport where, at the time I was throwing, the world champion looked like a truck driver. I mean, you just looked like shit. So we all thought you had to look like shit, and I had to learn that. But you look at these guys and go, okay, you're a strong man, and you're at the local USS show. You're not that strong. You're 40 years old, and you're super fucking fat and dying. I'm watching you rot right in front of me.
Yeah.
That's the first thing.
But they're worried about their lifts going up, and I'm like, well, I'm worried about you dying on my watch.
And
so let's get your...
Go down to a smaller weight class, and you're going to be fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
But nobody ever wants to have to take a step back and correct what needs corrected first to make them stronger, which is diet or recovery.
Yeah.
And they just think, well, no, I need to train specific to make sure that I'm getting stronger. And it's like, when he told me, well, no, you just know the technique and the movement, you're not getting any stronger. And I was just like, oh.
And that's the biggest thing I think is when you practice something over and over again, let's say like a specific event, are you really getting better at getting stronger, or are you just mastering the event? And 75 to 80% of the time, you're just mastering the event, but you're not actually creating new strength.
Right.
New strength comes from things that are not familiar with you, right? That's why I pick exercises that are different every week.
Let's conjugate, right?
It's so fucking easy for me to get stronger now because I don't have any pressure on myself. I can come in and pick whatever I want, but I never sell myself short. Like today, I fucking failed on my own belt squat.
Yeah.
You know how long that's been?
Right.
But you know why I failed on it? Because I picked a foot position I'm never in.
Mm-hmm.
I put my feet literally narrower than my hips. So I was doing an Olympic style, worse than Olympic style. I'm doing a fucking Tom Platt squat.
Right.
That I don't do because I'm hip dominant. And then took it up to 765 for a single with a 10-second negative. I wasn't coming up. But the point is that I put myself in a new environment.
Right.
Yeah.
After 27 years, I put myself in a new environment, you know? And everybody got squashed with something lighter than they could do. But that's the point. So now my legs are like, oh, guess we're not strong enough. Let's get stronger. But if I'd have done the same thing I was good at all the time, it just maintains what you already have. And maybe it makes your skill level at that particular angle better. But I didn't create anything new.
Yeah, it fed your ego, but it didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't actually get you any better. So now that you're done with powerlifting, I mean, are you done with powerlifting? Are you?
I'm just kind of sitting around, just training heavy.
How old are you now?
39.
Yeah.
I'll be 40. But the problem is, I did my first bench press meet in '93.
Yeah.
So that was 27 years ago. You know, I benched 250 at 13 years old, and the thing of it is, you know, I just started to look at the risk to benefit ratio. For me, I had done more than I ever thought I could do. I had pushed my body to the limit. I had walked into meets telling myself I do not care if I blow my back apart or blow both my knees off. I'm willing to take that risk to hit these numbers. You can only roll those dice so long, and I was like, you know what? Is it better that I walk away unscathed and healthy or be, you know, say one more world record or two more world records, and now I can't walk, I can't move. And to me, I don't want to be the guy that's walking around broke down from what I did, trying to tell other people about longevity.
Yeah, right.
Because I think that there's a certain time in which you start to look at, you get too smart. You start to look at what you're doing and you're going, you know, even if I make this, like, what did it really get me?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, you know what? I like moving my elbows, you know? I like being able to walk. I like getting out and around my car.
Right.
And then the other end of the spectrum is that my genetics, you know, do not play well with blood work or cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you know, the way I was eating and the things that I was doing, I'm way stronger 50 pounds heavier.
Right.
But I don't feel better, and I sure as fuck don't look better.
Yeah.
And it's just to the point where, you know, I talked to Serrano, and he's like, look, you got two avenues. This was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I can keep you as strong as you want to be right now, but you're starting to have these little things in your blood work that I'm just not liking. Mm-hmm. Triglycerides. My dad, when he found out he had cancer, his triglycerides were 1,600, right?
Yeah.
Mine were not even close to that, but they were starting to come up.
Yeah.
And, you know, my resting heart rate was starting to not be happy anymore. Mm-hmm. And he's like, or you can strip off 50, keep most of your muscle, and look like a badass for the next 20 years.
Right.
Which one you want to do? You can't have both. Because if you keep this up for another 2 or 3 years, you're going to have to weigh 220 to make sure your organs are not going to be beat up. And I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'll weigh 260 and look jacked all the time.
Yeah, right.
And if everything falls 50 pounds, who cares? You know, but the point is that you have to decide at that point when enough's enough. But what's funny is now that I've cleaned my diet up, and obviously you're going to take a hit after you lose your first 50 pounds.
Yeah.
But what I'm starting to realize now is that my body's become accustomed to my thinner waist, which has been the big issue because now when I pick up a heavy weight, my core is like, what are you doing? You're 8 inches less thick. Mm-hmm. I'm starting to realize that I don't know about all that external weight and how much it was really helping me because now my strength's coming back up. Mm-hmm. But Stan told me that was going to happen. He's like, look, dude, you came from being bloated and big your whole life. You strip off all of that, your leverages are going to be fucked for a while. He said, but in a year or two, he's like, you might be stronger than you were. So I don't know. The thing of it is that I will do whatever I can do that my body says, hey, you're still healthy.
Right.
The competition side of things is one of those iffy areas because what I'm starting to notice now is how much better my business is doing, how much better I can help Brooke when I'm not such a selfish fucking asshole.
You have to be selfish to break world records.
It would be hard for me to get ready for Brooke for the Arnold if I was getting ready for the old WPO right now because everything was about me. Now everything is about me for an hour and a half. Mm-hmm. And then it's about Brooke eating clean. It's about Brooke training hard. It's about my clients. It's about the new stuff we're doing a lot online now, all the new YouTube videos. Yeah. You know, the thing of it is that the reason I never did any of that is because I didn't have the time. Yeah. Now, I don't have to be at home sleeping for 3.5 hours to get ready to. I can do that every once in a while. And that's the thing is I just had to start thinking about less selfish things for the business to thrive, for Brooke to have a good base at the gym and then start to build her online coaching skills. And it's one of those things where I think I pushed so hard for so long that I'm not so content that I don't still like training hard, but I'm content enough with the numbers I did. If I never competed again, I wouldn't care.
And you're probably going to be training until they put you.
Yeah, I like to train. Right. Honestly, I don't really like to compete that much anymore. I did it at a high level for a long time, and to me, I have fun coming in the gym with guys that I've trained with for 6 or 7 years, and just feeling like I'm doing stuff that's healthy now.
Yeah, yeah.
And that to me feels better than competing.
Well, when I retired at 39, and it was like I wanted my business to get better. I'd thrown really far, and I didn't think I was going to I wasn't willing to put that extra work in to throw 2% further every
I know.
So it was like, all right, so I'm done, and now I go in there. I still love to train. I go in there and I train with my buddies, and we have a good time, and I'm still super competitive with them, and I'm looking at new things. So now I'm doing jiu-jitsu and all this shit, and it's like, well, this is a whole different way I got to train, because now I'm rolling with a 170-pound jiu-jitsu guy, and I'm dying, even though I'm way stronger than him for the first 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yep.
So you get all these new stimuluses, and it makes training fun again. Now, am I ever going to go and win Abu Dhabi Jiu-Jitsu? Fuck no.
Yeah.
I might go watch it on TV,
Yeah.
but
I think the thing of it is when you start to compete, and like I've had this conversation with Brooke for a while. Once you get to that certain highest level you can go in your sport, you got to be really careful because your time is limited.
Yeah.
Not because of the pressure, it's because of what you just hit on, which is the fact that you're going to train 100% harder for 2% gain.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to take. I benched 606 in 2015 after squatting the world record, which was one of the highest subtotals ever done. It took me another year and a half to bench 611.
Yeah.
5 fucking pounds. I mean, people don't realize, and it was like, I'm talking the most brutal shit. I wish I had every workout just to let people watch it for like a month.
Yeah.
Because it'd probably take a month straight to see them all. Look at what I had to do to put on 5 fucking pounds.
Right.
And that's when you realize you're at the top limit. You're not going to make another 30-pound jump anymore. And for me, the mileage that I was going to put on my body to say 622 or 617, I didn't care anymore. I knew that my body was maxed,
Yep.
you know?
That's the way I thought I was. 5'11". I'm not.
You're not Judd Logan.
Exactly. So
You're not 6'4", fucking 290.
Way above my pay grade. Way above my athletic potential. And it would have been an ungodly amount of work to get strong enough to throw just a little bit further. It just wasn't worth it.
Nope.
I noticed now, though, and we talked a little bit before the podcast, that the business seems to have there's a noticeable difference in the last year or so of how Wenning strength has gotten bigger.
Mm-hmm.
It's all over social media now.
Well, I think what you start to realize, and Brooke's been a big help with that, because Brooke's one of those people that if I have to leave and go talk somewhere, I don't have any problem with her taking over everything here at the gym.
Right.
And I haven't had that always. And the big thing of it is that I have a better team around me that is very knowledgeable, and I've made them earn my knowledge. As far as Brooke's been around me for 4 years now, and she's learned a lot. There still has a little bit more to learn, but like Teddy's been around me for 6 or 7 years and still learning. The point is, now they're at a point where I can trust them with 90% of who comes in here.
Right.
Now, if I get like a Michael Strahan walk in,
Right.
I'm going to have to be here.
Sure.
But that's not the normal clientele.
Yeah.
Right? Normal clientele is like, I bench 135, I want to do 185. They can take that all day.
Right.
Here's my point. The point is that the business has been able to thrive now because every time I went to that seminar, like you saw me up at Judd Logan's place in Ashland, you start to realize what you take for granted is nobody knows. And I started to realize that why don't I make this out, at least in pieces, for the masses to start bringing in a little bit more notoriety of what I do and what I know,
Right.
and what Brooke knows and what Teddy knows. And that's what I started to realize, that even these videos that I put out on YouTube for me are very simplistic in knowledge. I've known for years. Dude, nobody knows that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's done because I've had to speak to so many baseline firemen and military that don't have background in exercise physiology. I know how to take advanced things and explain them in a simple fashion that everybody can use. And that is an art and a skill that only a very few people have.
That's coaching, right? Because anyone, can study and get the knowledge, but can you put it on other people and make them understand it at a very simplistic level, something
Yeah.
that's super high level.
If you want to know what you know, take an advanced subject and explain it to a fucking sixth grader. And if that sixth grader can understand it, you probably know your shit.
Yeah.
But if you got to talk to another professor about what you're, right, and that's what I find at a lot of these conferences like we've been to before, they start talking about shit that, hey, I'm interested in it, but you can see around the whole crowd that everybody's lost.
Well, and I won't mention any names, but when we were at Swiss, I almost walked out of one seminar because the title of the seminar sounded fantastic, and I was super psyched to hear the guy talk. And about halfway through, I'm like, are you really going to fucking keep throwing these technical terms at me and not giving me any new information? And to be honest with you, as long as we've been in the game, I don't know how much new information there is out there.
There's not.
But
There's no new information. There's only new ways to apply that information.
Right.
There's only new ways to take that information and make it more applicable. What did I do with Brooke? I took a powerlifting psychology system that was, to most people, too complex to use because their ego gets in the way and they don't pick things they need. They pick things they like.
Yeah.
And I applied it to Strongman, and now Brooke thrived with it.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is the philosophy works for anything, but it's the application of the philosophy. Is that a new system? No, it's fucking Soviet 60s.
what's the Musashi quote? Once you know the way broadly, you see the way in everything.
Yeah.
You know, you can take that and put it forth towards anything you're doing. Are you training? Are you still going out and doing the strongman stuff out at
Yep.
what is it, Beyond Limits? Is that where you?
Yeah, that's where, depending on what events I have to train for, that's where I go out. And
Are you? How many times a week you hitting those now?
once a week,
Okay. So
just this training cycle.
And are you focusing just on what you're going to need to do for the next one?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's probably the way to go, right?
Yep.
How's your stone to shoulder coming?
it's there. I might be bald by the time it's done and over with.
At first, you
how just-
damn near ripped your ear off the first time.
Oh,
you tasted it.
yeah, I lost the earring on that side.
Yeah.
Oof.
But got to go to the right side for
Right.
Arnold. Yep, learn that lesson.
So we're
But-
actually doing this. We're a week away. We're
a week away,
from the Arnold.
yeah.
Right? I don't know when this will come out, but what is training like right now? I mean, are we into some kind of deload or?
Well, we put her into a massive squat. What was that? Tuesday. So we had about, roughly 10 or 12 days to recover, which was about the max. If you train consistently for a whole year, you need about 10 to 12 days at minimum to come down. But because of the cruise, we needed to push it something harder. I would have said 14, but we took it 3 more days harder. And then she had a little bit of a deload being sick and then having your back tweak. So what we had to do is go flip her back to more powerlifting style pressing strength instead of overhead, so we could still go max. But once we got that straightened out, that kind of actually all worked out really well because I think you probably feel better than you've ever felt in the whole cycle, but it all peaked at the right time. And that's
Right.
the hardest part about training. If you feel amazing at week 8 and your competition's week 12, you're not doing something right.
Yeah, right.
You should feel really good about 6 days out. You should feel like you could just run through a wall 6 days out. If you still feel like that in the middle, your training's probably not intensive enough.
Yeah, and is that something that's going to be different for each athlete? If you had 3 strongmen in here, I mean, are you going to have to? Did it take a while for you to tweak that with her and figure out?
Well, I mean,
she
I've
needed?
been pretty much in control of her. I've been slowly letting her get the control of her training to learn how to write stuff, but you have to be around somebody for quite a few years to see how they tick. But if I could, in a perfect world, I would make everybody, no matter, even if they're different, feel the same at the same time.
Right.
It might take a different level of intensity or work. Say if it's Shaw, Thor, and Brooke, those might take different exercises and work,
Right.
but I would want them to feel the same throughout the same process at the same time, if you could.
Right.
But you're talking some like Einstein mathematical shit there.
Yeah.
Because I'm dealing with one person trying to win the Arnold Classic at one time. I could not imagine what, and I think Efforting's really smart in trying to find the biggest gaps in Shaw and Thor's training, which was their diet, and just focus on that. He doesn't tell them what to do to lift.
Right.
He tells them what to do to eat. I think you almost have to have experts in those different areas, unless you're only working with one person, and then you can broad gap in between.
Yeah, well, it's like the UFC fighters who, you have your boxing coach and your nutritionist and your strength and conditioning coach and your jiu-jitsu guy, and it looks like another thing with Thor. Thor's dialing in that stuff in. He's got people who are helping him, and you notice as soon as he's done with one of these big competitions, that weight comes off him, and then he starts to slowly build that back
I think everybody, I think the first person to really learn to do that was Zadrunas.
Yeah.
Zadrunas would get almost unhealthily huge before a comp, and then you see him afterwards, and he almost looks like a fucking bodybuilder, But that's why he lasted in his 40s.
Right.
He stayed healthy all the way his 20s and 30s and 40s. That's why, in my opinion, him and Magnuson, you can't top them because they stayed so healthy for so long and won so many times, or at least were on the podium so many times with not really battling a lot of injuries. That to me is the success point. Like I tell these people, I'm like, you want to find the person that really knows their shit. Don't look for the person that just broke all the records. Look for the person that broke all the records, still walks around really good, looks super healthy now.
Yeah.
Like Magnus still looks super healthy at the Arnold.
Yep, he's lifting heavy again.
Who does he used to lift with that still looks like him though?
Yeah, none of them.
Zero.
Yeah.
See? Or if they're even still fucking alive.
Right.
And that's the real, in my opinion, the real testament, Well,
what do you think about these people? I talked about this with Dave Tate. Some of these guys on the internet who, I don't know if they're making a decision to, so you'll see like a certain girl and she'll deadlift 500 pounds seemingly weekly
for
Instagram.
I already know what you're talking about.
Or a guy doing the same thing where he's pulling an 800-pound deadlift every week. And I don't know if they're making the conscious choice, and I don't know if they're smart enough to be thinking this way. They're making a conscious choice to either get the short-term money through Instagram right now or train correctly and get to the point where in 20 years are the best there ever was. And I don't know if that's an actual conscious choice that they're a switch that they're turning.
Yeah, it's something that you see that it just irks me so bad because you even see highly educated people doing that. And
right. I think we're talking about the same person.
Yeah. You see highly educated people doing that. They're almost beating their body up. But I'll tell you, I think something that normal people don't really consider is they're not looking at somebody's anthropometrics. So, for instance, let's go back 25 more years to Eddie. Right? Ed Cohen deadlifted pretty heavy every week, roughly. But Ed Cohen was 5'4" with fucking 300-pound man hands.
Yeah.
Here's my point: is that Ed Cohen's anthropometrics would allow him to do that without as much wear and tear. So when they see somebody like a Dan Green, for example, which I have a ton of respect for, Dan Green's built to lift.
Yeah.
Same thing with Eric Lillibridge. But even Eric Lillibridge goes 1 week heavy, 1 week light, 1 week heavy, 1 week light. If he squats 1,000, the next week he squats 405.
Right.
Now, in my opinion, he trains way too specific. But the point is that at least he does a down week and an up week. So you don't really know if it's the timing of the lifts, if that was shot a month ago and they're just posting it and keeping heavy deadlifts posted all the time. But for me, I try to have a little bit more responsibility in what I post and kind of give somebody some insight and telling them, hey, look, why am I doing this exercise this week, this heavy today? Because I haven't done it in a year, and this is a new angle, and this is where my muscles felt healthy. But I find that specificity, especially on Instagram and social media, the specificity of those heavy lifts in the exact same angles is really giving a lot of this new generation of people that want to be strong an unrealistic view of how intensive you should train with specific modes.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
No. Yeah. I understand totally. And I don't, if they are making a conscious choice that they're going for that short-term money now, first of all, it would be surprising because nobody at 24 years old thinks that way.
Yeah.
They're just getting after it. And it's a shame because you're just waiting. You're waiting for it to stay. Even Danny Green you talked about. Dan was doing that and he broke. I mean, I don't know if that's why he broke, but his career was very short.
Dan, in my opinion, and a couple other guys are fractions of what they could have been based on the fact that they felt rushed.
Yeah.
And they felt that they had to do everything so specific, and it just really hurts me. But I know, for me personally, that I had to have the long game in my head all the time because I didn't have those kind of genetics. I'm 6'1". Right. 6'1" and built to bench is not a good deadlifter's position.
Yeah.
And I had massive hardships in certain mobility areas, i.e. ankle mobility for deadlifting to get my shins over the bar based on all my car accidents.
Right.
So the point is that I think it's really hard these days because you're seeing all the guys that are standing out as the super freaks, and they're just doing in such intensive shit specifically all the time that it gives people an unrealistic view of what's really attainable. And the average person is just not that.
Yeah.
And I think that, if one of those people would post, look, you're not this person, or you are not me. This is why I can do it this way. And my thought pattern is, I don't care if I can walk in 4 years.
Right.
If this is you, then try it my way. If you want to be, like I said, the person that I find has the most success in anything is the one that attains a high level and doesn't really pay for it.
Yeah.
That's the person that knows their shit, not the person that can be a flash in the pan for a second.
Right. Yeah, and like I said before, I don't know how often we're older, so we have that hindsight.
Yeah.
It's hard for a 20-some-year-old kid to think that way. And it's every kid I deal with in the gym. They just want to put more and more and more. And they want that secret, and it's hard to just say, you just need to do this for the next 10 years. Just stick with this and do this for the next 10 years. You'll be fine.
Because all of them look at that as a negative. And that is the real thought process of somebody that has maybe experience and smarts, is the fact that they always have a long-term game. Because what the real quest is to enjoy the process, not the result.
Right.
Like, Brooke gets first or gets third or gets fucking fifth. She had a hell of a time training, and guess what? She didn't really get hurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the goal. I mean, because at the end of the day, whoever wins the Arnold Classic in the male, obviously because it's going to have more publicity. But let's say Thor wins, right? If he wins this by a landslide, who cares in 60 days? Nobody.
Nope. Including him.
Including him.
Thing.
But the point is that we get so wrapped up in what's important that we don't look back and just enjoy the process.
Yeah.
And I think the people that can just enjoy the process, go and have fun when they compete, and just try to do the best they can do, are the ones that actually end up doing the best because they're not concerned with everything else.
Right.
When you have that external pressure, i.e. you're worried about your rankings and you're worried about who's doing this and who's doing that, you just limited your time and what you can sustain both stress-wise and physicality-wise.
Yeah, this next week should be your celebration for everything you've just put yourself through for the entire year.
Not only for me, but being back in Columbus, it's for everybody who's helped me along my journey. It's their celebration too.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you've gotten a lot of press this year, it seems like. People are paying attention, especially here in Columbus.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
It is. I'm honored.
So it looks like you're always doing some kind of media in here.
I try.
Yeah. Are you looking to, does it help the personal training business? It's got to be hard for you because the majority of women that come into my gym, even though later they might want to lift a heavy Atlas stone, the first thing they want to say is, I just want to be thinner.
Well, see, that's never my goal, is to get them in the strong woman. It's like, just get yourself into the gym and do things that you never thought, one, you could possibly do.
Right.
Two, start creating your own goals. You're not defined just because you have kids or you're a wife. And that's not the only thing that's going on in your life.
Sure.
Yes, we have different phases as the kids get older and whatnot, but you also need to go find yourself and make yourself healthy.
Well, that's why these women get pissed off at 55 and leave their husbands.
Exactly.
Their whole life is revolved around raising
They
these
realize they
kids.
did nothing with their life.
Yes.
And it's like, you first have to take care of yourself. And I feel like you find so much about who you are and where you want to go by just having that time with the weight. And it doesn't judge you. So, you can just leave it all
and
here.
I think Brooke's starting to have the realization, just like I had, that when you start looking harder and you start looking leaner, you're more applicable to the average population.
So when I was throwing, I was 310 pounds, and as soon as I opened the gym, I retired and I was down to I think like 240, and all of a sudden people started wanting to actually train with me because nobody wants to train with the guy who looks like a big fat fuck. Doesn't matter how strong you are.
Right.
I know, because the average person doesn't look at that. Well, they look at, it's very judgmental and it's not the right look, right?
Yeah.
But they look at that and they go, I don't want to look like that.
And you will.
And they think
you think 5 days into the workout you're going to look like that guy.
And then they see it, the amount of work and the hardness the work is, and they go, I'm going to work that hard to look like that. No thanks.
Right.
But the thing of it is, when you start walking in, you got a V taper,
Yep.
right? You start having some fucking glutes. You start looking like an athlete. It's amazing how that transitions. It's crazy. But that's one of the big things we were just talking about with Corey Gregory. He maintains his leanness because his sales on everything he does goes up triple. He said, when I was a big fat dude at 230, 240 at his frame, He goes, nobody gave a shit what supplements I had.
Yeah.
And as soon as I had a fucking 8-pack, everybody wanted my creatine or my this and my that. And he's like, it sucks that it's that way. But like I said, for Brooke and for me, I don't care about that. It's a health thing.
Right.
I want Brooke to be as strong as she fucking can and not carry any excessive weight, because that's not going to, one, help her lift anymore, and two, it's not going to increase her longevity. So what's the advantage?
Right.
To feel 5 pounds stronger in a deadlift? Who gives a shit?
Yep.
It's not going to win the competition.
Yeah.
Know what I mean?
Yeah, and well, with you, there's so little money involved in this anyhow.
Right.
You know.
And that's what like people don't get. I'm like, yeah, it's fun to be first place, but I don't always have to be first, and there's a time and a place for it. Again, like ending a competition without an injury keeps me in the game longer. And
Well, then she's got the same problems too that the WPO had and all these other organizations have. She go to these big meets, there's supposed to be prize money, and then they don't even turn over the fucking prize money.
See, that doesn't surprise me at all. When I first when I came back and I was doing some master strongman, one of the promoters came to me and said, "Oh man, you were a pro Highland Games athlete. We're starting this pro strongman league." And I'm like, "Really?" I said, "What does that? What do the events pay?" And he's like, "Well, sometimes we'll get your hotel and your registration fee." And I'm like, "That ain't fucking pro."
Yeah.
I'm gonna put all this time in to be a pro master strongman and not make any money.
Yeah.
which
That's
is
the
why
big
you
problem
see
is-
a lot of people who backed out of Arnold this year, because there's no guarantee that we're going to get paid, or
Well,
it's not going anywhere.
so our events that we do are never sanctioned. So I was talking to, I won't say who she was, but I was talking to a pro strong woman the other day, and I said, just come do our events. I pay you. I'll actually pay you. I mean, you get prize money.
Right.
And you're not in trouble because this isn't a sanctioned
Not
event,
sanctioned.
So she was like, oh my God, I think that's
Yeah.
the way we do things.
Yep.
Totally nuts.
That's kind of like where the route is that we're all going now, because it's like, okay, we're traveling, we're trying to qualify for the next show, and then you don't get paid. And it's kind of like,
I'm not paying you a lot of money, but it's going to get your groceries for a week.
yeah,
That's not bad, right?
good enough, and especially if it's close by, right?
Right.
Good events for you, and you don't have to really train specific for it.
Well, that's the other thing is you were talking about, well, maybe I take not place first at every one of them. At the level you're at and with the girls you're at, if you tried to place first at all of them, you'd probably end up not placing first at any of them.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be a path to which events are actually important and which aren't.
Yep.
And try to move towards those. And like with our event, it's a training day. Come out and train and get
Right.
$100, or whatever.
Yep.
But
Keeps it fun.
So we got the Arnold next weekend, so you're getting ready for that. So how you feel? Feel confident? You ready to go?
I feel good. I'm ready to go.
Good.
But just remaining calm until then.
Yeah. And Matt, you're going to be, I'm guessing, just inundated with nutballs next week.
Fuck. So I'll be at the we're having Michael Hearn and my seminar Thursday night from 7 to 9. Hopefully Mike makes it. His kid's getting ready to get born. So he said okay without thinking about
Right.
his kid's supposed to be born the next week.
Right.
So if he makes it, I'll be surprised. But if not, Ed Cohen and Heath, oh shit, he played for the Patriots. He's going to come out and hang out with us.
Oh yeah,
Heath Evans.
Yeah, I think he's got the huge bench press, right?
Yeah,
He
yeah.
a bunch of reps.
Yeah, he can do like 45 reps
It's not
at
a
225.
bad seminar regardless.
No,
you
so
know?
we just charged a T-shirt to come. It was just mostly a motivation talk
That's
and
awesome.
all that. So I think it'll go smooth. And then we have our bench seminar on Saturday from like 4 to 8, and then on Friday I'll be at the slingshot booth from like 10 to 2, and then I'll be at the vertical diet booth with Stan and Thor and all those guys from probably 2 to 5.
It's like the Grammys for meatheads.
Yeah, pretty much. Luckily, I'm standing in a booth and not have to be out in the crowd.
That's what I was telling Brooke. I'm not even going in. I'm doing podcasts.
Don't be doing it.
I can't go in there and rub shoulders and.
No. The best time to go in there is like at 10 o'clock, right when it opens up on Friday, walk around for about an hour and a half and get the fuck out of there.
Yep.
It's totally crazy.
All right. Well, I want to thank you guys for doing this.
Yeah, no
This
problem.
was great, and hopefully we'll do this again sometime.
Anytime.
Anything you guys want to plug before we go?
Well, I mean, Brooke's doing all the strongman training online now.
Yeah,
So on
there is that.
winningstrength.com, and then we're still doing all the stuff with our thing, with the powerlifting and the general fitness, and then Brooke's been using the shit out of the Good Morning machine and the reverse hyper.
You build all that shit, right?
Yeah, so I built
awesome.
all the prototypes.
Yeah.
And made them and then tweaked them and got them exactly where I wanted them, and then now I turn it over to a builder.
The
But
morning machine is badass.
yeah,
It's really
it's sweet.
cool.
It's got a lot of isometric options to it and safety catches, so you
Yeah.
can go really heavy if you don't have training partners. But yeah,
Nice.
we've just been, Brooks had the advantage of just having equipment that we can train really hard around anything that hurts.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. If our back hurts, we just belt squat heavy as shit.
It's nice to use the belt squat and the Good Morning machine to save my grip than
Sure.
for all the strongman events.
Yeah, so we can
too.
still kind of train her powerlifting style, and then she's
Right.
got her hands fresh for the strongman shit.
Makes
And
a ton
shoulders
of
safe,
sense.
yeah.
Makes a ton of sense.
Plus, gives a little bit more of a recovery aspect. But I would say, Brooks' big advantage this cycle is just learning how to recover, and then just training smarter every year. Just learning more. I mean, that should be anybody's journey on how to train, is constantly learning your body, but understanding you're not going to be in the same pond every time. You got to make changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well,
Cool.
good luck next weekend.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys. It's been the Refined Savage. See ya.
Hey guys, thanks for listening, and make sure you go on over to therefinedsavage.com. Check out all the gear there. More gear you buy, the cooler the podcast get. More places we can go, more people we can see. Thanks a lot. See ya.